a little bit myself. I think Rose is an excellent job, more than I can sell myself. But in a nutshell, my name is Catarina. I am a SUMA alumni from 2018 at Columbia. I was the president for the alumni for the last 2 years. I was happy to hand over it January 2021 to some of my colleagues now. I am a regular contributor for the SPS Career Lab, SIPA Net Impact, SUMA Net Impact, SIPA Energy Symposium. I'm a judge for the Energy Symposium at SIPA. So a lot of touch points during the year with all of you guys. You probably also know me from the cost benefit analysis workshop that we do every year. So I'm pretty sure that my face is very well known at this point. So what about a little bit of my background? Rose is an excellent job summarizing everything I did. Believe me, it's not as impressive as she made it look like. But in a nutshell, I would say I have lived and worked in 4 different places, Africa, Europe, Middle East, North America, which gave me some perspective of cultures and flexibility to engage with different type of people. And I have also worked in a broad range of infrastructure, both from the inside. So I have worked in these industries, and sometimes I have worked as a consultant to these industries. So I have done both of the sides for telecommunications, aviation, water, and strategy. I have also worked with energy, but always as a consultant. I have not joined an energy firm. So something to aim one day to add here to the list. So let's talk about consulting. So talking about consulting, what is the ultimate purpose of a consultant? I like to put it here because I think for all of you that are in the field or aim to enter the field, this is probably the most important thing that you need to know. Your role is actually to provide the recommendation, the best recommendation you have as an expert in your area of impact to an organization, eventually to help them improve their performance, improve their business, do a big change in the way they operate. But your role is actually of being an advisor. So that's ultimately how you should see yourself. So you have an employer, but that employer is employing you to be an advisor for someone else. So ultimately, if you think about it, your employer is actually who you are advising. That's your client, and the client focus is really important in everything you do. Rosanna has a great experience. We'll share with you later on how she's doing it. So how can we think about consulting? I know because I have advised multiple Columbia alumni and students around how to think about consulting. And I know that most people struggle to actually structure what they want to do. And I usually, when I come across students or young professionals, what I hear is people talk to me about one side in terms of, I want to do strategy, I want to do operations, or of the other side saying, I want to do property, I want to do energy. And probably all of you have recognized some of these patterns in yourselves. So I love this slide. It's so simple, so obvious, but I'm not really sure if all of us are thinking about it anytime we have a conversation about consulting. So this is actually a matrix. That's how you should think about consulting. So there are types of consulting. You can do strategy consulting. You can do organizational change, which is going to be around people, teams, roles. You can be a financial consultant. You can do legal, operations, technology, sustainability. So there is a whole range of types of consultancy that you can provide. And then there are markets, right? You can do that for energy. You can do that for property. You can do that for our water. Sometimes you can do that for multiple of them. Or no, or the other way around is also possible. You can operate only in energy, but maybe you do both strategy and financial advice. So all combinations are possible, dependently what are you really your area of expertise, but just always try to position yourself. What is really that you are providing and what is the space that you operate? If you understand that, it's very easy for you to know the type of companies that you could be working for and working with. Make sense? Okay, so with that in mind, there is also 2 more things that I want you to think about. One is there are large consulting firms. So on top of that matrix, you also need to think about two different consulting types. There are large firms and there are boutique firms. So let's start with large firms. Large firms, because they usually have a very large scale, it's like a big company, let's say McKinsey, BCG, Deloitte, PwC, Accenture, because they have a very large scale. Usually inside those companies, there are specializations. So let's say in Accenture or in McKinsey, usually you specialize in a specific market, in a specific type of client, or in a specific type of consulting. Just imagine the two columns we saw before. In those firms that are so big, you're going to probably specialize in one of these things. That's usually how you think about how you join a large firm, how to find a space there. However, if you're joining a smaller firm in consulting, you can think about your role in a much more broader field. So a boutique consulting firm, usually it's a smaller scale in terms of has less people, has less revenues, less clients, much less projects. But on the other hand, you do a little bit of everything. Because it's smaller, you manage the project, you do the sales, you deliver the work, probably across multiple industries or multiple types of functions. So it's actually a trade-off, and there is not one that is better than the other. It's not saying that a large firm is better than a small firm. Everything has their trade-offs, and anytime you think about if you want to join consulting, you should try to see what do you think would fit you. If you prefer to be a specialist, or if you prefer in a larger corporation, a more corporate world, or if you would prefer to join more like a boutique type of consulting and do a little bit of everything at a smaller scale. Okay, so I'll suggest us to move forward. I promise this is going to be a very practical 101. So what about becoming a consultant? So let's talk about that. So a lot of times when people finally can say, okay, I now get you, I know how to think about consulting, I now can think what are the advantages and disadvantages of a small firm or a large firm, but what are the skills that we look for when we look into a consultant? And this is across the whole thing. It doesn't matter what you're doing, it doesn't matter what size and what skill you have. There are characteristics that you need to have if you want to become a really good consultant. So number one, and I think probably the most important one, is being a problem solver. So there is a difference between getting a task done and solving a problem, right? So I can always find so many people that can do tasks when they are well defined and they know how to do that. But I don't find easily someone that can structure me what is the problem, right? When you work for a client, the first thing that you need when you're advising them is defining the problem. If you don't define the problem well, the solution will never be good. So that's the most important thing. You need to have the structured thinking. It needs to be simple. It needs to be clear. It needs to be actionable. It's the first most important skill. I must say that probably engineers by nature have this skill very well developed, because across the course of your engineering training is all about solving problems. It doesn't mean that you are automatically a natural consultant, but it means it is more natural to use logic in a problem solving skill than sometimes people that have different backgrounds. But this is something that is absolutely possible to develop. It's a skill that you can absolutely develop. So don't be disappointed if you come from a history or philosophy. You can absolutely master this. So the second one is having critical thinking. So you should always think about the why of things. You gotta be curious, right? So clients will tell you things and you gotta need to think in your brain, why is that? Why do we do it that way? Why can't they do anything else different? Why did they decide this instead of that? If you ask the whys, you will much easier navigate what is the nature of the problem and find a solution. Then the third one, which I think is in the opposite end of what engineers are good, is usually what engineers are not very good at, is being a great storyteller. A great storyteller means I can structure the problem, I can have a critical thinking of it and figure out a solution. But if I don't communicate it in a very easy way to digest that is logical, approachable, it doesn't matter how good of a problem solver you are. You really need to be a storyteller. I would say these three skills are probably 99% of your job. If you master them really well, I think it is really hard that you don't add value in the work you do. Everything else is very important, but these three are absolutely critical. When we tell stories, it's just beyond being able to communicate, it's also to empathize. Your message needs to suit who is receiving it, is having the flexibility to adjust as you communicate. So Rosanna does this very well. We have worked together in a couple of projects. She's amazing storyteller for our clients. So I'll let her share some of the experience of how she does it really well. So hopefully you'll take some tips from her later on. Then two other things that really matter is credibility and relationship building. They are at a different level of importance, but they are important, right? I think they probably will apply to everything you do, not just a consultant. A consultant would benefit for sure from them, because if you are an advisor, people need to rely on you and think that you have the credibility to advise. And also, if you want to continue that work, there must be a relationship. It can't be just skill. There must be something that you taught the client that you're really good at, and that eventually turns into a relationship. So that's how I would structure how to become a consultant. Rose, there we go. Next one. So we're almost approaching the end. So we're going to hear from Rosanna and take questions very soon. So bear with me a few minutes more. Let's talk now a little bit about typical responsibilities. Another thing I have came across a lot of Columbia students and even young professionals along my career is when people think about consulting, it comes to your mind that very romantic vision. There is a person all in suit with this bag, just moving between hotels and doing like great decisions, really important work. That's true. I'm not saying that's not true, but you got to understand that that's going to be a couple of days in your year, and there are going to be the whole other days that you need to do the more typical work. And what is really the more typical work? Number one, PowerPoint is going to become your tool, or Google Slides, or whatever you use. You're going to do dozens of presentations. That's how you communicate. That's how you tell a story. That's how you engage with people. So you're going to be pretty much doing slides all the time, and Excel. So that's 90% of your time. Then after that, you're going to do a lot of interviews, right? Interviewing people, listening to people, asking questions, incorporating that feedback, a lot of engagements. Research. So sometimes you're going to do primary research, but on other times you need to do secondary research. So there is something that you need to get used to: benchmark, Google, learn how to structure knowledge, a lot of data analysis, assist the team that is engaging with the client, assess clients' problems, provide recommendations, and of course, building the relationship. So it is not all about making the big decisions and deciding on acquisitions. It's really about doing a lot of Excels and slides and PowerPoints and listening to people. Having listening capabilities is absolutely crucial for your job. Rose, we ready? Okay, so I'm going to finalize before I pass with Rosanna with something that I think is really important. Number one is how you should think about screening opportunities. And number two, things to take in the future anytime you approach a job. So how to screen opportunities. And this is very personal. I'm pretty sure if you hear from different people, they will say different things. But this is how I screen mine. So number one, I understand my strengths. Not every person will fit a profile of a consultant. And it doesn't mean that you're not good at what you're going to do. It just means that what you're going to do should not be consulting. So you should really understand where your strengths lay. Maybe you're more of an analyst. Maybe you're more of a salesperson. Maybe you're more of a team building. type of leader. So there are different things that you might be good at that is not consulting, and you should not in any way think of them as less important than becoming a consultant. So assess your strengths and align your career with what you're really good at, because that's what's going to take you far. Then the second one is prioritize the type of work and clients to titles. I have seen it across also a lot of different engagements I have, is people really focus on the title of the job. And I can tell you, if the title is really good, but is in a company that no one really knows, it has 5 employees, but it's a title that is much minor in a really large corporation, quite frankly, it is the client that really matters, is not the title. And it is what you did there, the real work and the impact and the value of it that matters, is not the title. No one is going to give you other opportunities based on your previous title. It's a secondary thing in the big scheme of things. Is really about the type of clients and the type of work you showed yourself capable of doing. If you are really good with it, just believe me, titles arise from success. You'll get to that amazing title. Just don't focus on it first. Another thing is choose carefully the people you work with. You will in your career come across, again, many opportunities, many projects, but in the end of the day, and especially in consulting, that it's all about people. It is the people you work with that they're gonna teach you or they're not gonna teach you. They're gonna support you or they're not gonna support you. They are reliable or they're not. So you're not developing a product, you're selling a service, and it's a people service. It's advisors to others. So the people you work with in your team and in your client is really important. So be choosy and be picky when you think about a supervisor or a team member. Then another thing is don't take job descriptions to heart. I have seen people screening jobs on LinkedIn and in the Columbia open jobs. You go there and people say, oh, I fit 90% of it, so I'm going to apply. And then they never get called. And people are like, I don't understand. I fitted all the requirements there. And the other way around, it's like, oh, I only have half of it, so I'm not going to apply. Both approaches are not necessarily the most constructive way of thinking about a job. So a job description, think about it as a guidance. It's kind of what ideally we were looking at. But eventually companies hire people. They don't hire a list of bullets. So if you prove yourself to be able to do that job well or be able to grow in that job well, that's really what matters. So listen to job descriptions as a guidance that you see fit or not. But if you still think there is a fit, just don't give up straight away. Go for it. And then another and final thought is you will have a lot of chance of becoming a consultant in the career. I see some anxiety sometimes, people thinking, I don't know, I want to be a consultant, but I'm not really sure. Maybe I got this job offer, so should I take it? The truth is, this is not a 1 and 0 in your lifetime. After school, you become a consultant or you're not. I have transitioned between all sorts of roles, internal, external, consultant, internal, consultant, external, in all sorts of ways. I can make a beautiful story around it that makes total sense, but in truth, not reality, not always reality was that way. The truth is, you'll have so many opportunities. Just don't stress yourself too much. If you think this is not the moment to become a consultant, you'll have many other chances along your career to think about it. So I think the most important thing you want to take away of this, independently of being a consultant or not being a consultant, is you got to be excellent in everything you do. That's really what matters. So you need to build a reputation of quality around you. It is not about that specific situation that you did really well, or that specific skill, like very tiny, that you're really good at. It must be all about you. It must be the way you carry yourself, how you engage with others, how you plan your life, how you live your life, how you do your work. It's quality that needs to be tagged into your face, and that people need to see that whatever you're going to do, it's going to always become good work. And the other thing is ask the right questions. When we said before that critical thinking is a way to go, you need not to know all the answers, but you absolutely need to articulate the problem. That's one of the things that most people sometimes confuse, is that a consultant won't know it all. There is no such a thing as an advisor that can come into a company that is there for 100 years doing a specific business, and then an external person comes in and teach them something new that no one ever thought about. There's going to be a very minor amount of times that that happens. What is going to really happen is that you're going to ask that company the real right questions, that you don't have the answer. They have the answer, but they have never thought about that question. So it's a really important thing for you to keep in mind. Another thing, and I think Rosanna is gonna recognize that very much in me, in the way I engage with our colleagues, is bring me solutions, not problems. This is a way I try to engage with teams, and I encourage you always to do. When I have a team that is working on something and they come with they get stuck somewhere, I expect them to come with a sort of options of how to solve it, right? If you're gonna, anytime you're gonna get stuck, you're gonna kind of cry and just ask for help, you're actually not being a good consultant for yourself. So a good consultant will be able to say, okay, finding the problem is the beginning of your responsibilities. After that, you gotta suggest solutions, and you gotta come and you gotta say, look, I got this issue. I think we can go A, B, or C. I think B is the best. What do you think? Right? That's an easier way. And maybe I'll reply and I say, neither A, neither B, neither C, it's D. But our level of conversation is not in the problem anymore, is in the solution. So I think that's an important mindset to have. Another thing is everything counts. There is not such a thing as I am in a meeting, so I'm very professional, and then I am, in the cafe, and I can be totally relaxed and casual. I think you need to understand that it's an image of reliability, of credibility, of quality that you're building around you, and everything, every minute, every interaction, everything counts. I'm also very well known in the team I work with for never accepting drafting documents. For me, a draft is an incomplete document. It means that there are sections in it that are not completed. But having a draft that is a raw thing, is not ready for revision, you shouldn't send it. It's the image that you're building around yourself that really matters. Everything you do needs to be the best you can do, impeccable. Is the best you can do in the time that you were given. There is no such a thing as I will come back to it and rework on it 10 more times. No, you're gonna do this well, it's done, and then you're gonna do the next thing, then you're gonna do the next thing. So it's important that you start building that idea that people expect from you. Everything is gonna always look good. And then finally is embracing the unknown. So I think there is a level of risk in everything you will do, because you will do so many things that are new and you have never done before. So no one is expecting you to know everything, but everyone will expect you to be able to learn. That's a really important statement. And I totally encourage you to always live to it. It's not about being a living encyclopedia and a living machine. Is being able to learn, to grow, and to ask the right questions. Very good. So success, it's not about your job. It's really about you. And talking about you and personal individuals, I'm gonna now pass to Rosanna to introduce herself.
Hi guys, thanks Kat very much. I thought you did a great job explaining exactly what we do every day. Thank you to the shout out from my husband earlier. For those of you who saw it, surprised me a little bit. Rosanna Collars, I'm a senior planner at Arup in New York City. I manage our freight planning and logistics practice. We're one of the many consulting teams in Arup, New York. I'm both a licensed architect and planner, so had a kind of crazy career route to becoming a consultant. And as listed there, I am a program manager for one of our big tech clients in the city.
Very good. Okay, Rose. So let's do a little bit of a conversation between the two of us. I know we know each other so well, but I'm pretty sure the other people want to know more about your career. So I'll take it very fluidly here and just ask you to think about what came to your mind when you decided to become a consultant? What was it?
That's such a great question. I don't know what everyone's backgrounds here on the call, and I hope to hear a little bit more from all of you later. I actually went to school for architecture, so I'm sure many of you could surmise from being a licensed architect and planner, that's actually where my education is, and that's the case. But a 5-year architecture degree teaches you a lot, but I think I'm sitting there, I like to solve problems, and every semester and every project was just a new problem to solve. And so I think that's really what got me hooked. And then through planning, I studied 2 different kinds of planning for my master's degree. I was able to just see that there's just so much within the built environment to plan for, to strategize about, to advise people on, especially as so much of our population is centered within cities and urban environments. So I think that's where I really got hooked. I still wanted to pursue being an architect and being a planner. So after my Bachelor of Architecture, I finished a Master of Infrastructure Planning and then a Master in City and Regional Planning, focused on freight transport and logistics. So I continued to do that. But I think, one of the other things that really resonated with me in your presentation was the idea about storytelling. And I think off the bat in architecture school, I'm not sure how familiar everyone is about these crazy design professions. You can work all semester and come up with a really beautiful concept and actually what maybe one of us would consider a really wonderful technical solution. That 3-4 months of work could completely go down the tubes in a 20-minute presentation at the very end to your clients or to the professors, the critics, and if you don't explain it very well. So if you don't narrate a really good solution for all of your work, you could derail the whole thing, and you might be talking about a tiny little window detail when you wanted to talk about a really big picture. Conversely, you might never get to talk about that beautiful detail that you drew because you got they got sidetracked on something else based on what you said. So I think the idea about storytelling and problem solving just stuck with me from early those days, early on.
That's a really good way to put it, and I think it's a very good transition to 2 other things we have here that I would love to hear from you. Number one is, what are the top 3 skills that you think make an excellent consultant? I can tell already you shortlisted storytelling, but tell me what are other 2 that you look for when you hire people for your team. And then the other one is the flip side. What do you think are the things that aspiring consultants should avoid? So what is a consultant, if you want to become one, you should try to avoid these traps. So let's start with the good ones. What makes a good consultant?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I absolutely think storytelling is behind it all. You can come up with a great solution, but making it resonate with your client and having them understand, this is the solution, this is why you should care, and this is why it matters to you, I think is really important. And I think the next thing I would say is listening, because the only way you're really going to understand what's important to your client, and how to actually create a narrative that really resonates with them is by understanding them really well. And that's often, sometimes as technical experts, or strategy people, we want to just say what we think and get it out there. But actually being a little bit more reserved and getting to know your client, getting to know your team, and really hearing what's out there, I think is the most important in the long run, especially as you're starting out, either, I guess, as a young consultant, or you're starting out with a client, whether you're 2 years in or 20 years in. Understanding them is the foundation of it all.
So storyteller, a good listener. What would be the third one?
So you asked me what I look for when I hired, and it's funny because Kat and I met a year ago when I was actually hiring. I had 2 positions open for my team. And it's actually really, really difficult to hire a logistics consultant in New York City for the kinds of operations and strategy that we do. In fact, I probably gave a range of like 6 to 7 different college degrees that you could have. Just because if I limited it down to, you had to study logistics or something, I wasn't going to find anyone at all. I think for me, it came down to someone who's really agile and flexible in their thinking. So they have a really good, strong background in technical skills in something, right? So if you have some kind of engineering, if you have some kind of background where you had to learn lots of different things in order to do your role, that was always a really big help to me. But how good were they in their interview in terms of communicating what they had done? had they had the opportunity to take a complex problem and narrate that in their internship or to a professor, could they give me examples about that? So actually, I think about within the last year and how we grew our team, and those were actually the most important things. And actually, it was never those, again, what the technical skills were not necessarily important. Each one brings a different set. And I think it's made a great mix. But I think, again, that ability to sell yourself, that ability to explain how you would approach a problem, how you would talk about a solution. I often want to know how people distill really complex ideas into something easy to digest. And so I think, if you can answer that question really well and tell me about a time that you did that, it's a good chance that I'm going to want to have another conversation with you.
So being articulated is important to you. That's basically what I'm taking away. So you're saying that it's being a storyteller, it's being a good listener, and is having the ability to articulate your ideas well, that really makes you successful in what you do.
And then also what Catarina just did and what she does all the time, which is really quickly on her feet, just take what you've given, right? And this is why we work so well together. And she'll just say, okay, this is what I heard, and this is what I think it is, and this is actually what we're going to do next about it. And so I don't know what that skill is called, Kat, but
it's called cat skill.
Yeah. But if you're able to kind of, be able to think on your feet and understand, okay, this is what I'm hearing. Is this what we're going to do next? That's pretty excellent.
That's great. Okay, so before we open to questions, I would invite you to tell what are your thoughts about what should people avoid, and what is your advice for all the people here on the call that are considering consulting as their career?
I love the advice that you gave about being solution driven. So even when you're faced with a problem, how are you going to solve it? How are you going to talk to other people? And I think with that goes hand in hand. I think what Kat was saying, it doesn't mean you don't ask for help. It means that you're just more proactive in what you're asking for and being a part of the solution or a path to the solution. So I think, not being able to do that while not being afraid to ask for help is somehow a balancing act, but an important skill to figure out. I think something really important to avoid, at least based off of my experience, what I've seen is kind of a tunnel vision when it comes to working. You mentioned, Kat, that consulting is very much people driven. It's all about people and who you work with and your clients and how you engage. And I think, tunnel vision is super great when you have an exam to complete, right? And you want to kind of make it through. But I think having enough self-awareness at all times is really important to say, am I doing the right thing? Do I need to take 3 steps back and start over? Is this really what my client cares about? You can get 10 slides in, there's countless times where we've sat at the same presentation and looked at the slide over and over again. Is this really what we need to hear? And maybe it's wrong, and because you're not so focused on just communicating what you think is right, that you're pushing it forward without really taking a step back and saying, is this really what's important right now? Is it important to my client? Is this the right time to be talking about it? And I think kind of just continuing to ask those questions and making sure that you're not so proud or coming to a point that even could be interpreted as arrogance, because that's actually quite easy to do in the consulting world when you have all this experience, your client hired you for that experience and you want to tell them solution. So I think for me, that's, something to be really careful about, is just having that awareness and being very conscientious about what you're doing.
It's a very good way to wrap it up. It's actually this focus on people you work with and people you're working for. And again, ties really well with this idea that if you are an analyst, you're really good working alone and you prefer to work alone, it doesn't mean that you cannot succeed in your career. It means that potentially you would thrive more in an environment that would empower you to do more of that. So a consultant, needs to handle too many different things at the same time and too many people, too many masters to please.
Wear many different hats.
Many different. Very good.